Hello, and welcome to this set of videos taking a look at egoism and altruism, two contrasting views in our overview of ethical systems. In this first video, we're going to take a look at the concepts associated with egoism. So for the concepts of egoism and altruism, basically we're looking at interaction among individuals. And so this is going to give rise to, kind of focus on yourself, focus on the individual in the form of psychological egoism and ethical egoism, or the contrast of that, altruism, is focusing less on yourself and focusing more on what you can do for others. So the first of these is psychological egoism. And so psychological egoism is basically a focusing on one's own welfare, on one's own needs. And so the view of psychological egoism is that we should be doing those actions. We should always do that which we perceive to be in our own self-interest. And so we should take an action that is going to be most beneficial to us. And therefore, in psychological egoism, we're saying basically that, it's fine to be selfish, that you need to do whatever you do, but you should do that for your own satisfaction. You should do it for yourself and for no other reason. So the view of psychological egoism says that you can be selfish, and basically you should be selfish, but psychological egoism does allow for actions that do not maximize the self-interest. And so you don't always have to be doing, watching out solely for yourself. But the view of psychological egoism rules out altruistic behaviors. So altruistic behavior is basically doing something for the betterment of others. Usually at your expense, or actions motivated by duty. I feel guilty, so therefore I must do this. Or society expects this from me, so I must have to do this. Those things are going to be at odds with psychological egoism. So if we extend this concept of psychological egoism to society, basically what we're looking at is focusing in on self-satisfaction. In the view of psychological egoism, everyone is, or everyone should be, an egoist, and everyone should be trying to do what brings them the greatest level of satisfaction. And so therefore we're looking at, we are always going to be doing those things that are going to bring us satisfaction in the success of carrying out that action. And so the goal then of psychological egoism is to experience satisfaction. Now, in this pursuit of satisfaction, we run the risk of the paradox of hedonism. Hedonism is basically the search for pleasure, and that pleasure then would be achieved through achieving gaining your self-interest. And so we need to be careful because happiness is an elusive goal, especially if it's the only thing that you are pursuing. Trying to get to happiness, trying to get to satisfaction. And so the paradox of hedonism is that if you're trying to reach happiness and happiness alone, you're not going to get it. You're only going to achieve happiness when you are pursuing and accomplishing other worthy goals, and those other worthy goals are going to what gives you your indirect gain of happiness. Now, like many of these different ethical systems, there are going to be some problems associated with psychological egoism. If we apply psychological egoism to its kind of logical conclusion, or at least its definition, what it's saying is that we must only act to promote our own self-interest, even including our subconscious motivations. And so everything we should do should bring us a benefit. But there are going to be a lot of other things that are going to be opportunities for us to act that are not necessarily going to be to our benefit. They may be things that are neutral for us, maybe neutral for others, or there be things that are potentially neutral for us that are a benefit to others. And this would be at odds with this view of psychological egoism, where everybody should basically view the world as if the universe revolves around them, and they are the sole kind of determinant, they're the sole decision maker for what it is that they're going to be pursuing. So a variation of psychological egoism is, for lack of a better term, ethical egoism. And so with psychological egoism, everybody should be acting as acting in their own self-interest. With ethical egoism, we're saying everyone ought to behave to serve their own best interests. And so basically saying that it's moral to maximize your own interest even when it conflicts with the interests of others. And the reason for this is that if everyone ought to be acting in their self-interest, other people are not going to be acting to improve your condition, your situation. And so it is apparent upon you to be responsible for your happiness, to be responsible for achieving your goals and maximizing your own self-interests. So with this concept of ethical egoism, again, you're focused solely on yourself. And so you're saying that it's okay to sacrifice the good of others for our own sake, even when it's unjust to do so, even if it was to violate societal moral standards, if it was to break some of those moral rules, or how the rules applied to, or have been applied to creation of laws within a society. So in this pursuit of our self-interest, we're concerned with promoting our own good. But we need to recognize that that does not necessarily happen in a vacuum. That if we are focusing in on a good outcome or a good effect, there are going to be actions that are going to have to lead into that. There's going to be a cost that is going to have to go into achieving that outcome. And so, in reality, in life, we need to be able to accept occasional failure to attain our goals, because that's going to be part of human nature, that we can't always be kind of advancing our own situation. So an ethical egoist ought not be dependent on others to maximize their own goals. And so what happens if your self-interest depends on others? So we got an example of here. And so it's the Herndon, get it on the right slide, the Herndon Monument Clyde at the Naval Academy. And so there's basically a statue here. At the top of this is the Dixie Cup hat, kind of like over here. And then the first-year students, known as plebes at the United States Naval Academy, have to climb up this tower, remove the Dixie Cup cap, and replace it with an upperclassman's hat. Now, it doesn't sound all that difficult, except for the fact that this monument has been covered with vegetable shortening. And so these plebes, these first-year students, have to climb up upon their fellow students in order to make it all the way to the top. And you can see the hat, as they're trying to get it up into the top there. They're trying to do that. But in this case, they have to work together in order to achieve the goals, even if they are the individual goals of each person within this group. Now, in this case, after successful completion, the students, those first-year plebes, are no longer plebes, but they're going to be fourth-class midshipmen, and so they're going to be officially done with their first year at the Naval Academy. Now, like many of these ethical systems that we've started to take a look at within this overview, there are going to be problems associated with ethical egoism as a moral code. Ethical egoism is going to be associated with inconsistency. It's going to direct people to different actions if they have different self-interest. Again, if people are acting towards their own self-interest and they have differing views, that then becomes difficult to determine what is the appropriate view, because it is basically on an individual basis. What the individual feels is going to give them the most benefit, the greatest self-interest, or the greatest effect that is going to be to their benefit out of this. Ethical egoism also cannot be publicized. An egocist can only benefit when others don't realize that they're acting selfishly. And so if they're going to be acting selfishly, other people may not necessarily be working with them. They're going to be working against them to advance their own personal goals. And so because of that, maybe nobody is going to be getting what it is they want, or get the consequences or the effects that they want. Hey, so thank you for watching this first half of the videos on egoism and altruism. We finished up with psychological and ethical egoism. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the concept of altruism.